Okay, great. Very hard, thanks. All right, so we are talking about how to get to nationals. And my goal for today is to help you reimagine for yourself what your training can do. So, I think we can find a way, there is a way that's probably a lot easier and more effective than whatever it is that you're doing now. Um, and so here's what we're going to be covering, just so you have an outline, you know where we're going. We're going to talk about some examples of typical results that you can expect. We're going to talk about the scientific principles behind our premium process, which is the process that we've used to help players get to higher levels. We've got a 5-step process I'll talk about. I'm going to talk about the common errors and misconceptions about each step. There's going to be time for Q&A. And for those of you who can stay to the end, there's going to be a free bonus. And then there's also going to be an opportunity to work with me more closely on your getting to nationals plan. So, sound good? Here we go. So, again, if you stay to the end, there's a free bonus. And it's going to be a part of what I offer in my premium program. I'm going to give it to you for free for funsies. Just real quick, I want you to know who I am. So I know a lot of you have already told me you've read my emails for a while. My name is Melissa Whitmer. And basically, most people know me because of the UAP Strength and Conditioning Program. UAP is Ultimate Athlete Project. And I created that after I did some training myself to become a far better athlete in my 30s than I ever was in my 20s. And through that program, I've helped hundreds of athletes already make it to their first nationals for the first time. And what I've known for is that I really rely on scientific principles. I'm actually trained as a chemist. I have a scientific mind. So no fads, no magic, just science and best practices. And now I am older still, and then that happens. And then I continue to coach athletes all over the world via Zoom and in my travels. So I have a kind of goal to coach or play Ultimate in every WIFTF member country. And I think I'm up to like 37. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. So along the way in my career as an athlete, I've had a lot of successes, done a lot of things right. I actually got a degree in kinesiology as well, and I did that just to help myself get better at Frisbee. By using what I learned, I taught myself how to throw. I gained some elite level individual skills, especially throwing skills, taught myself how to coach. Again, taught myself how to become an athlete. I tried out for and made an elite team in Philadelphia with no prior Ultimate pedigree. So, I know there's a lot of folks that feel like if they don't come from college programs, they can't make the elite teams, but that's not been true in my experience. And I know a lot of other athletes that are the same. And then, the thing that I'm best at is taking complex ideas and creating simple and actionable systems. And that's really why the UAP Strength and Conditioning program works so well. And now this new program I've developed, is kind of similar, taking theoretical concepts and making it actionable. So I've already helped hundreds of athletes get to Ultimate, to get to nationals for the first time, or, become practice players on national levels teams. That's what I like to do. So because why? Because of my failures. So in some ways, like, I didn't actually achieve my true goal as an Ultimate player. I have been to nationals a few times, but I never had the experience that I wanted. So I went to college nationals and I went to club nationals, but kind of with teams that I didn't really jive with, or it just wasn't a great experience. And then the team that I did love, I never made. So I made the practice. I was a practice player for Scandal, but I never made the roster. So I never really had that ideal experience that I was looking for as a player. And some things that I also did along the way is, like, I knew that my confidence and mental game was a problem, and I did not get help for it, even though it was kind of obvious to myself. And then I also, I became this athlete in my 30s, kind of ran out of time. So I think that's another sort of mistake that I made. So, but because of these failures, I've learned that, athleticism is helpful, but sometimes it's not enough. And I kind of continue to work on this problem of, like, what is the difference between players who get stuck like I did while others kind of go the whole way. And I think, that drives me to forever be looking for these answers. So now I live vicariously through players that I coach, just like you. And so after doing this for a while, these are some of the things I've learned. Athleticism is obviously very important, but it's not enough for some. For some, it is. And again, many have gotten to nationals just by using the strength and conditioning program. But, for some, it's not enough, or it's not enough to, like, have the experience that you want. So other things I've learned, if you don't have your mental game in place, it's very hard to get the next level. Or in coaching some athletes that are at that level, they often still have mental game problems, and it just makes the game less enjoyable. So just not as fun. And I think that would be kind of the same for me. So even getting to nationals didn't quite have the experience I wanted, didn't really fulfill me in the way that I thought it would. And then, what I've learned working with myself and other athletes is that what you think you need and what you actually need are often very different things. So yeah. And then, I learned this the hard way through my own experience. Some of the things I did is, I did focus a lot on athleticism. I became a very good athlete. I threw a lot, but I didn't throw in a way that actually gave me like great decisions on the field. That was always kind of a weakness. I was never secure in my decisions. And then I would kind of hope that I'd play best when it mattered most. I did do well enough at tryouts to become a practice player, but not make the roster. And it was all kind of up to chance. Like I just hoped that it would happen. And then the hard way I've seen this in my clients too is getting perfectionistic about things like speed, jumping ability, and then ignoring things like skills or game IQ problems that they have. And I've seen people sort of expect a tryout squad to recognize them and find them, even though like they themselves don't know what they're contributing to the team. Or reading endless articles, watching hours of YouTube videos. Lots of folks do this, and then hope that it somehow transfers to the field. And I'll tell you why that's really a difficult way to do things in a minute. Or, just doing the same type of thing, hoping for better results. I think related to that is like accepting this idea that it's got to be slow. There's going to be slow, continuous improvement, just needs repetition. While there's some truth to that, I think that it prevents folks from actually doing the type of work that would speed up their learning processes very much. And confusing perfectionism for pursuit of excellence is a big problem some clients have. And then knowing you have confidence issues and not getting help for them is also something that makes it hard. So these are some of my experiences and then some experiences of my clients. And I'm wondering, for those of you who are here, does any of this sound a bit too close to home, too familiar? I'm seeing some nods. Feel free to let me know in the chat if anything stands out to you, or put a 1 in the chat if you recognize yourself in some of these struggles. Okay. Excellent. Got some 1s in the chat. Thank you. All right. All right. So let's talk about maybe doing things a little bit easier. So if you would like an easier, scientifically supported way that translates more rapidly to the performance in the field, that's what we're here to talk about today. Okay. All right, excellent. In the chat, definitely confused perfectionism with pursuit of excellence. Yep. And having clear ways to define the problem. Yep. Oh, what a clear way to define it. Yeah, thank you. All right, yeah. Cool. All right. So now here's some quick stories. And these are going to be just quick stories from some of my clients just to show what can happen. So, and this is over the course of about 6 to 10 weeks, depending on what we're talking about. But going from things like feeling like not much of a defensive player. So this is Drew was a client who was shifted into a role that they didn't exactly choose. So thought of themselves as an offensive player, but had to play defense and didn't really think that they had that skill. So after going through this process, they got their first layout D ever within a matter of about 3 or 4 weeks. They reliably were getting defensive blocks. And as they said, I don't really know where they're coming from, but I know I'm going to get one. And then also was a handler, so then was breaking the mark more easily without thinking about it. And then, also developed good flow with those teammates who was on a different team. So that was another result. But these are the kind of results that we got through this process. And a quote from him that I really like, he talks about my programming is better results than I thought possible with less effort than I expected. And I think this is a great example because this client, we talk about perfectionism and compliance with the programming. I can kind of see in the back end how much of the course folks went through. And this is one who was not perfectionistic, let's just say, about compliance with the course or with the programming. So it would often show up to coaching calls, having not done the homework, and we do the homework together. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is a very busy person, right? But I think this is also a good example because this is someone who had tremendous on the field specific results without giving 110%, giving maybe 70%. So anyway, that's true. And then Sheeman, she said of herself, I would have described myself as a basket case. She has a story where she sort of had a self-destructive at tryouts where she made an error, got in her own head about it, and then continued to make the same type of turnover like 3 or 4 more times. This person had a lot of negative self-talk. And, after going through this training, started playing much better under pressure, would describe herself as someone who can play well under pressure, became able to recover from mistakes more quickly, and was able to adjust to feedback and coaching quickly without getting into sort of perfectionistic or negative self-talk thinking. And then in fact became so confident in her own abilities, owning her own skills, that she was able to advocate for herself when a team considered not giving her a practice player's spot. She was able to say why she should be getting this spot, and she was successful. So I thought that was kind of incredible for someone who really didn't used to own their own skills that they had, to go from that to advocating for herself. And then just going to share one more quick vignette. This is Duncan. So what he said of himself: if you would have told me 3 months ago I'd be working out 5 days a week, I would have thought you were crazy. This person also struggled with imposter syndrome. So again, a person that was very skilled on a good team, but still didn't quite have the mental game together. And so, he went from not training very consistently and feeling bad about it to training consistently. And then he could also miss a few workouts or like days without totally breaking his habits. So if you've ever like tried a new habit, you miss a day and then suddenly it's like all out the window. If you're one of those people, like, yeah, that's pretty common. So he's able to do that, able to miss a day and then come back and still have the habit. Now he feels like he belongs on any team he makes. So we kind of got rid of the imposter syndrome issue pretty quickly. And also more specifically on the field, is more able to identify common patterns in decision making and change them pretty quickly. So these are just some of the skills that you could acquire. Now, so first of all, yeah, are any of these results things that you'd like? And maybe if you want to put in the chat, like what of those that we talked about, what's maybe something that's most attractive to you? If none of them are attractive to you, well then maybe I need to change my presentation. Okay, but mental game improvements in general, okay, good. All right. So I think, yeah, some of them we already mentioned about the confusing perfectionism with pursuit of excellence. Yep. Excellent. I'd like to be able to improve the speed of my decision making without sacrificing accuracy or performance. Cool. Yeah, and then other results that people come looking for, let's go into that. Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of folks want to improve their decision making. A lot of folks want to be able to do things like feel like they have more control of their decision making, or know when they've made a good decision and when they haven't, or even just like feel like they can be more assertive, but yeah, without, like you said, without sacrificing accuracy, without sacrificing performance. Great. Okay, cool. So I just talked about kind of 3 short client experiences with 3 kind of different categories of results. And the reason I brought them up is, I want to talk about what these actually all have in common. So here's the things that I didn't do. So these are clients that I coached. And I think when folks learn that I coach over Zoom, if they imagine what it is, I think they have kind of the wrong conception in mind. So here's what I didn't do. I didn't create an individualized plan for any of these folks. I didn't analyze their game footage and watch it. In fact, for most of these players, I never saw them play, though one of them got a layout D and I saw the video of that. And I didn't tell them what to do. So, and I think that's really important. It's definitely a different style of coaching, because what I love about this method is that it really empowers the athletes to make their own decisions and to learn how to trust themselves. And then at the end of the program, they're not very reliant on me. We do, well, I'll explain more later. Okay, but I didn't do any of those things. So here's what I did do. So I helped them to learn to use the most powerful training tool that they had, which is your brain. So here's what we're talking about. And here's kind of the main kind of underpinnings of why this all works so well and how it works. So we kind of had 2 brains. And if you've ever read The Inner Game of Tennis, it's a popular book. Yeah, highly recommend it. It's kind of talking about the same concept. So we have this conscious brain, does things on purpose. If you're deciding that you want to go to nationals, that's your conscious brain talking. It does a lot of thinking and deciding. It's logical. So point A to point B, it can make a plan how to get from point A to point B. And it can explain what it knows in words. So sometimes I refer to this as your verbal brain. So in creating this presentation, I used a lot of my conscious brain. Now, we have the other part of our brain, which is the older part of the brain. So kind of evolved earlier. And it's different. Okay, so it does things on autopilot. It's the thing that controls motor skills, learning, and execution. And just for a real quick kind of demonstration of this, like if you think about if you had to like write a letter to someone who'd never seen a Frisbee and explain to them how to throw a forehand, and if you had to write down instructions and send it to them, would they be able to read what you wrote and then throw a forehand? It would be extremely challenging because your conscious brain doesn't even know what muscles you're using. It doesn't know how hard to fire them. It doesn't know any of those things. Those are all just sort of captured in your nonverbal brain as an informational packet that it just executes. Okay, nonverbal brain also controls things like your habits, and it controls your belief systems, some of which you just inherit from your culture or your family. And it also so it's like nonverbal. It can explain what it knows in feelings. So your nonverbal brain is actually a lot more powerful than your conscious brain. It controls a lot more of what you do on a regular basis because it controls your habits, because it controls your belief system. It actually executes a lot more power over your life than you want it to, maybe, or than you think it should, because our logical brain is more tied with who we think of as like our free will. We think we decide, we think we do these things logically, and really the reality is doesn't exactly work that way. So anyway, the nonverbal brain is involved in all the things that you need for sports performance. And the problem is that no one ever really taught you how to use it. So like you use your logical brain in school, and you even learn how to learn with your logical brain. You learn how to read, you learn how to take notes, use flashcards, do practice tests. You learn how to learn with your logical brain. But no one ever really taught you how to use this more powerful system or the less logical part. School is all about logic, but it doesn't control most of what we do in life. So even if you took gym class, you repeated some things, you learned how to play sports, but that's about it. You didn't actually learn how to learn with your nonverbal brain. So again, let's see. So when we look at these results that folks got, the things they have in common is that they all just came about by learning how to use their nonverbal brain a little better. So, finding these Ds without knowing where they come from, finally laying out after not doing it for a while. These are things that sort of came on autopilot. The decision to lay out is usually, when it happens, not a conscious decision. It's more just happens. When we look at the result of being able to get rid of negative self-talk, advocate for yourself, believe you belong on a good team, this is about your belief systems, right? If you can change that, you change how you show up to tryouts in a major way. And yeah, when you talk about training consistently, if you athleticism is a problem, but you can't stick to a workout plan, then that's about your habits. And so your habits are controlled by your nonverbal brain. So by being able to harness the power of your nonverbal brain, you can build better habits. And then also any kind of thing that has to do with patterns and decision making are also, of course, controlled by your nonverbal brain. It's how it executes the motor skills it learns. So what I've come to believe in working with these clients and others and going through this process is like, there's a lot of misconceptions about what it takes to get to nationals. You do need some athleticism, obviously, but you don't need to be spending all your time in the gym. And I think that's what a lot of people think it takes. You don't need elite level coaching, and it doesn't have to be quite so hard as we make it sometimes, especially in ultimate Frisbee, which is a new sport. I think you can get a lot of progress in a short amount of time, and it doesn't have to take so long to get on a nationals level team as perhaps you think it might. So again, we're talking about power of our brain. Let's see. Not sure why I repeated that slide. Okay, so what we have is we have a process that teaches you how to work with your nonverbal brain effectively and understand how these processes work, and then actually use your nonverbal brain. So So yeah, when you and your nonverbal brain are pulling in the same direction, then your results do feel automatic. It feels like they're more coming to you on autopilot because a lot of the learning, the discovery, and the execution is happening from your nonverbal brain. So, okay, this is, sorry, with me so far. So far, is this making sense? Just want to do a quick check-in. I can get a thumbs up or a 2 in the chat or something. Great. Okay, yes. Okay, exclamation point. Great. All right, so far so good. So that's kind of some of the science behind it. Now, the process. So here's just a quick and dirty of the process. We kind of start with assessing the athlete, helping them assess themselves. We define a direction that we go in. We choose 1 or 2 skills from the 5x5 assessment that are related to the role that you want on the team that you want. And then the key is that you're going to learn a lot of these mental skills by applying them to the ultimate skills or ultimate game IQ issues that you're working on. All right, so we really learn by doing. And this is a critical piece here because, again, it's kind of like why just reading about ultimate or even watching YouTube videos where someone explains concepts to you, it's like those, I'm not saying those are useless, but they are, knowing intellectually how to play the game of ultimate does not guarantee that it actually happens on the field. And in fact, if we can communicate more directly with the nonverbal brain, things show up on the field much faster. And so that's what this process is about. And even the process of learning the mental training skills, we're learning by doing them. So I could give you a list of what the mental training skills are, which I will do. And even if I explained them to you and gave you an intellectual understanding of them, it doesn't mean you'd be able to use them. So we learn how to use them by doing and then getting coached on those skills as you apply them specifically to the ultimate skills and game IQ things that you want. Okay, I think that's all I want to say about that. All right, I'm just going to tell you what they are so that your brain doesn't have an open loop wondering what those are. These are the 7 skills. So we're using feelings as information is a skill you're going to learn. Thought work is a thing that we do similar to, a little bit similar to cognitive behavioral therapy. Visualization for skills and game IQ acquisition. Building and using a pre-performance routine, doing mental map conversations, doing deliberate practice, and learning how to do self-coaching, basically how to help yourself make different decisions. So these are some of the skills we use. Some of these you may have heard of before. Some of these are mine that I made up words for. But yeah, these are the skills that we do. Now I want to talk about the process a little bit more in more detail. So again, we don't just learn these skills intellectually, we learn these skills by practicing them while working on a specific skill or game IQ. And that's why we get results on the field within a few weeks. So I'm going to talk about these steps and kind of condense the process. So this is a simplified version, but it's going to give you a pretty good understanding of what happens. So we start with a self-assessment. And in the self-assessment also is a little bit of self-acceptance work. So this may be relevant to some of you more than others, but the athlete needs to accept both their weaknesses and their strengths. So if you're an athlete that does struggle with perfectionism or negative self-talk, sometimes it's more challenging to accept the skills that you have versus accepting the weaknesses that you have. Okay, I'm seeing some nods there. Okay, yeah. So we do a self-assessment and we try to sort of be as neutral about it as possible and accept both the good and the bad. Why this matters? Well, when you are trying to build a map of where you're going, it's helpful to know where you're starting. Okay, so that's kind of not rocket science. As I mentioned, accepting your talents is an important part of growing them. And accepting your weaknesses in a neutral way is an important part of deciding consciously with your logical brain whether you want to ignore them or address them. So common thing players do that struggle with perfectionism is, there's weaknesses in your game, then we make that mean a weakness about us as a person. Basically, we take things personally, which is kind of normal and also not helpful. So we sort of try to eliminate that piece. Try to get to accepting weaknesses in a neutral way. And you don't have to fix all of them. I think that's also an important thing to know. Okay, so it's really about owning your skills, knowing what they are, and taking responsibility for them. Okay, so Step 2, we eliminate some mental roadblocks. So a lot of these things are intertwined. Eliminating mental roadblocks is an important, also kind of can be related to accepting your own skills. But why this matters is if you don't believe that you belong playing at a higher level, it's going to be difficult to perform when you get there. So for me, this was a big problem I had. Actually, I could perform well at tryouts. It would be after I'd make the team, then I'd suddenly believe that I didn't actually deserve it, blah, blah, blah. So that's boring and not helpful. But it's a common thing. So if you don't believe you belong playing at a higher level, it's going to be hard for you to perform when you get there, whether that's at tryouts or after you make the team. Okay, and then so the main thing is that we want to get your nonverbal brain working towards the things you want and help it feel safe along the way. So if it doesn't feel safe going into tryouts, it's just not going to be able to relax and help you actually execute the things you know how to execute. In the process of doing this, you're going to develop more of an awareness of your feelings and your ability to use your feelings as a source of information. So this is how you learn that mental skill while you're, say, kind of doing these first 2 steps. Okay, is this mostly making sense so far? Okay, cool. All right, I'm gonna keep going, but there will be time for questions at the end. All right, then step 3, we create a clear destination. Now, it's important to note that we have this step 3 after step 2. So step 2 is about eliminating the roadblocks, and step 3 is about picking the destination. And I think the reason a lot of folks get stuck is because they try to do step 3 before they've done step 2, or and if you try to do step 3 before you do step 2, you're going to run into problems. So obviously, if you don't know where you're going, it's more difficult to get there. Again, picking a destination is not rocket science. But here, I'm going to look at this. Whoops. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so picking a destination is also about helping you to do the things that are most likely to make you succeed. So I truly think that if you don't do step 2, some people don't really make good plans for themselves as a form of self-sabotage. Like, you're not able to make a good plan if you don't believe that you can actually get to the destination first. Or they'll get stuck working on things that don't matter because they don't actually believe that they can really get to where they want to go. If you're confident that you can get to where you want to go, it's much easier to ignore the things that don't matter or to work on the things that do. And then another form of self-sabotage would be just working on things that don't matter because you're afraid if you work on things that do matter, you're going to fail anyway. So it's really important to have step 2 in order. This kind of starting to work on our thought work on our belief system that we belong, that we can get to where we want to go before we do step 3 and make a plan. It's going to affect your ability to make a good plan with your logical brain and your ability to follow through with it. Anyway, other things about making a plan, again, it's about focus. So for players that don't make a plan or don't believe they can actually get to where they want to go quickly, they're content with just getting a little better each year and kind of trying to improve everything at once, and that makes them improve less quickly. So focus is really helpful because it gives you permission to work on the things that matter and permission not to do the things that are less efficient. And so it's just really important part of the process. And then also just defining what specific skills and things you need. Okay, so step 4. Then we create a pre-performance routine is one of the things that we do in this program. And it matters for a few reasons. So obviously, it is helpful if you can gain some control over your own level of arousal is the term they use in school, or level of excitement is probably more what most people would say. How excited you are, how amped up you are. If you can gain some level of actual conscious control over that, that can be helpful. And by conscious control, you consciously choose to do your pre-performance routine. You can consciously make a pre-performance routine, and it acts on your nonverbal brain. In practicing your pre-performance routine and seeing its effects, you become more aware of your excitement level, and you can create more consistency in your mental state. And it's just another tool to help you put yourself in the state you want to be in. And, you know, and you can see how this would matter for your performance in a game or in a tournament. But I think it also matters for your training. If you can create more days that are above average in your training, that's basically pulling your average up, right? So that's how you pull your average forward. You need more days above average than below average, then your average becomes higher. That's the definition of average. But, you know, if you're someone that has trouble, you know, really performing consistently at practice or putting your best foot forward in practice, you know, it's just your average is going to be dragged down by that. So I think it matters not just for performance in tournaments and games, but also for your learning processes. And then also having a performance routine gives you a quick way to reset yourself if you feel off track. And it's just a really good practical tool. Okay, so that's one of the things we practice along the way and use. Okay, and then step 5, or what we work on, is learning to think like an elite player. We've talked about feeling like one, feeling like you belong, but learning to think like an elite player is basically what enables you to perform like an elite player. And I mean this in this section really practically. So we've talked about how the nonverbal brain has a mental map of how you throw a forehand, and has a mental map of basically all the things you do on the field. And you'll never have conscious access to your own mental maps or the mental maps of others. But we can ask better questions to other players who have the skills we want or the game IQ we want to give us hints into what their mental maps are. This is also an important part of teammate skills. So kind of this concept of having flow with your teammates, all this means is that you're just kind of having more overlapping mental maps. You think about things the same way. You are looking at the same things and you're expecting the same things. So it seems like you communicate by telepathy, but really it's just overlapping mental maps. Okay, and so then just like flow with teammates, if your nonverbal brain can learn to think about a situation like an elite player, then you're going to execute like an elite player. And again, this is the important distinction, is that intellectual understanding doesn't really matter nearly as much to your performance of the field. And if you've ever watched a player or a team be on the corner of an end zone, the dump is wide open, they don't look at it, they ram it into the corner of the end zone, every player knows they should intellectually, almost every player knows intellectually that's not what they want to do. But yet you still see that a lot on every team I've ever been on. That still happens. So it just shows you how powerfully like the intellectual understanding does not matter. So anyway, okay, so just want to check in again. This is kind of a simplification, but it really kind of captures a lot of what players do when they go through the programming and the mental skills they learn along the way. So is this making sense so far? Okay. All right. Okay, yeah. And yes, so making sense, and can elaborate more on how to do step 2. Yeah, let me quickly, yeah, I'll quickly answer that question now. So yeah, so the skill that we use in this is, so I went back to the 7 skills. Some of the skills that we use for that one would be, thought work is a big skill that we use for that. And that is simply, okay. I have a whole workshop on this. The quickest way to explain it is your nonverbal brain has some belief systems in it that might be inhibiting what you're able to do. So let's see. Let me think of a quick example. Okay, this word belong here, if feeling like you belong is kind of an important feeling. So when players say like collapse under pressure or don't perform well at tryouts, you can kind of boil it down to like this feeling of like, I don't belong here, whether it's I don't belong in this team or I don't belong in this field. You know, it often comes down to that, or it comes down to like what other players might be thinking about them. Like, oh, other players are going to think I'm dumb if I ask that question at tryouts. Other players are going to think I'm dumb if I throw that and it doesn't work out. Like, these are things that are like sort of like kind of on the cusp of like conscious and unconscious thought. It might bubble up into our conscious mind, but they kind of reflect like what we think about ourselves. Either I don't belong here or I'm not good enough. And that's kind of like just universal kind of root causes of a lot of insecurity, whether on the Frisbee field or in life. So, you'll never really get rid of like those core fears, but we can sort of map how our thoughts spiral down to those core fears. So if I throw a turnover, it's kind of like how we interpret mistakes and how we interpret the world. So one of the concepts I talk about is like a thought spiral. So if, like, you turn it over, the first thought is usually, I'm so dumb, or why did I do that? And then you think things like, oh, I better not do that again, or I don't deserve to be here, blah, blah, blah. So we make that one mistake mean something else, and we kind of do this thought spiral. So some of this work is sort of bringing that thought spiral that's happening on the verge of consciousness and being more aware of it. And then identifying like something in the middle. Like, you're never going to eliminate completely that feeling that you don't belong or aren't good enough, but you can eliminate things like, when you like that, you are able to, you can still make a good team even if you make mistakes, right? So a lot of it comes back to perfectionism, right? If you're a perfectionist, if you make a mistake, you make it mean that suddenly like you don't belong there. But there's like a whole, you need to believe that you can make mistakes and still make this team, right? If you believe that, then you could relax about it and it wouldn't be such a big deal. That's kind of a quick and dirty example, but is that helpful? So some of it is about doing some thought work on those thoughts in the middle of the thought spiral, which is basically rewiring our belief system by doing some writing down some sentences every day. That's practically what we do. And then the work of figuring out what those thoughts need to be is about examining maybe specific situations and exploring kind of like the thought and feeling patterns of those specific situations. And that's where coaching in that specific step is super helpful for athletes, because it can be challenging to do that by yourself, because again, these thoughts are sort of on the verge of conscious and unconscious. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. Okay. Is the focus of a pre-performance routine for step 4 mental? Okay, right. So yeah, pre-performance routine is in this specific example, I'm talking about a mental pre-performance routine. It can be done in conjunction with a physical routine, but yeah, for this one, we're talking about mental aspect of it. Okay, if you have other questions, let's put those on hold for just a minute and we'll do them all at once. Okay, great. Right, helpful, cool. So you probably have some more questions. You can kind of ruminate on those for a second. All right. So a big question that folks tend to ask me about this kind of training is like, how long does it take? Okay, like if we're actually going to commit to doing this stuff, like what does it mean? So I want to address this one. So when I work with my premium clients, we start off with we always start off with a call. So I've done this kind of training with one-on-one calls with groups. I did it as a course. I've done it a variety of ways or variety of formats, but no matter what, I always do a one-on-one call, because that initial step of the thought work stuff, really, it's very hard to do without some coaching. There's some very common mistakes that I can help folks with on call that they can't do themselves. So it always includes a call. But then the actual coursework of like learning what these things are and doing the homework, there's lessons that you do and then homework for each, because you have to learn by doing. So those lessons, I say 10 to 60 minutes, but most of them are like 10 to 20 minutes of watching a video and then doing the homework. And then what I recommend with my one-on-one clients, we just do one-on-one coaching week after week. For folks that did the course, they didn't get that. For folks that did the group, we did the coaching in a group. And then I'm going to talk about how we're going to do it in this next format that I've got coming up. And then now once you, like the first time you go through the 6-week process of applying these mental training skills to the ultimate skills, it's going to take you a little bit of time because you're learning the mental training skills as well. And then every time you go through that process again of 6 weeks of focusing on a new skill or a new game IQ thing, it's going to take less time to remember how to use those things and practice them. But once you're in the groove, the mental training really is going to take you 10 minutes a day or less. So again, first time you go through the course and learn the skills, it's going to take you probably, an hour a week, or maybe like 20 minutes if you're just watching the lessons and doing the homework. If you're doing a combination of doing the lessons and attending a coaching call, then you're talking about an hour a week or maybe up to 2 hours max for about 10 weeks. Okay, then you have those skills and then you can use them 10 minutes a day, maybe with some extra support along the way. So again, this idea of better results than I thought possible with less effort than I expected is really what I now kind of aim for. And for the clients that I've worked with, again, even them following the course and with about 70% compliance, you still get really good results. So again, what you can expect, and because we start with the thought work thing, like that step one, that really produces for a lot of folks, especially if you know that you have some confidence stuff, or that you don't perform well under pressure, or that you make mistakes and it sticks in your head. That can you can make tremendous progress on that in just 4 to 6 weeks. And that's why that idea that if you know you need help and you don't get it is so kind of frustrating to look back on myself and realize it wasn't that hard to fix. We could have fixed it. So anyway, but what you can expect in about 4 to 6 weeks is you can expect greater confidence and more assertive play on the field. So that's what a lot of clients are looking for. We've had multiple people on this program get first layout Ds or first layouts, and that usually happens within about 6 weeks. And if you do this, if you define a role and figure out a tryout plan, you have greatly increased chances of making the team that you want. You're going to have game IQ that is actually noticeable on the field because it causes you to do different things rather than just intellectually understand different things. You would have bounced back from mistakes more quickly. Going to learn how to set goals that bring out the best in you, that are motivating rather than demotivating. And I think a lot of folks who go through the program don't realize they need this, but appreciate when they have it, feeling like they really belong in the field, that they can play with the higher level players that they want to play with, and just feeling like they belong on a team in general. That sense of belonging, sometimes you don't know you didn't have it until you have more of it. And it's always fun to see that when that happens. So these are what you can expect. It doesn't, as I mentioned, doesn't take forever, right? And it's just I think about a lot of it is analogous to strength and conditioning. If you've never been on an athletic performance program, you get really big results really, really quickly. And that's what you can expect from this as well. If you've never specifically tried to do any kind of mental training, you're going to see results very quickly. And then, of course, the longer you do it, the stronger you get, just like strength training. Okay, so if you do it for 4 to 6 weeks and get great results and then stop, it's okay, that's great. You will have gotten some great results that you can be very proud of. But if you continue to do it, it just sort of becomes a way of life, and you become more mentally strong. And then all the clients I've worked at have also applied these skills in other areas of their life. So as you practice it on ultimate skills, you become more familiar with how your nonverbal brain works. You can learn how to apply it to other things too. Okay, so what you can expect in 3 to 6 years. I really think if you want to be on a nationals level team, I really believe if you consistently commit to using these methods, at least somewhat consistently, not perfectly, I do think 3 to 6 years is a reasonable amount of time to do this work and get the results that you want. So as I mentioned, 70% compliance. I want it to work for real humans with normal lives. So C- work is good enough. Okay. All right. So are these concepts something that you would like to dive deeper into, learn more about? Getting some nods. Okay, great. Okay, so I will then answer a few more questions, talk about an opportunity coming up, and give you a bonus. So I'm going to stop the recording here. I made this slide so I wouldn't forget. All right, so let me see if I can figure out how to do that. Okay, and then for those of you who are watching the recordings, don't worry, you're going to have access to good stuff as well. Just wanted to give a little something extra to folks who could take the time to be with me today. Let's stop the